Thank you, Chad. All right. Do we have any?
Anybody online? There are no members of the public online.
All right, then is it fair to say I do not have to go through number 4?
You don't have to.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 5, seating of alternates. Looks to me like we have a quorum, don't we? 1, 2, 3 out of 4. We have a quorum.
You do.
Chad, please stay, but item 6, additions, deletions, amendments to the agenda. Start as always with staff. Anything you want to change, Tracy? No, Tom? No? Okay. Committee members, anything you want to change?
No, sir.
Okay. Item 7, public comment. We don't. Okay. Julie Johnson, our former vice chair, and new board member would like to say a few words to the committee. Julie, why don't you go up to the microphone or?
Well, I'm here just to say thank you. The election was very tight, and I believe the experiences that I was able to learn from the Budget and Finance Committee, as well as Engineering and Operations, was very important in the voting by the board. I also want to just thank you personally for your time and investment in teaching me, because that meant a lot to me, and it will carry me through for the rest of my life in many different experiences. So my deepest appreciation and thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate that, Julie. It's very nice of you. All right. Item 8, approval of minutes. I guess I just want to say Julie was a very active and engaged member of the committee, as many of you know, and she served on the communications committee, and then she came to the finance committee, and then she came to the engineering committee, and she's the only person I know that has made the trifecta of the committees, and she was a regular attendee, sometimes by Zoom, mostly in person, and we're going to miss you, Julie, but we'll see you in a larger environment. But thank you. Thank you for your service. Item 8, approval of minutes. All of you have received the minutes, and so do any of you have any comments or suggested changes to the minutes?
I don't.
If not, I'm looking for a motion.
Second.
Okay, moved by Pete, and seconded by Bill, and we can do this by voice vote here. Is that correct?
Correct. If you can all make sure your mics are on, that would be great.
Everybody mics on? Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Minutes are passed unanimously. Item number 9. General manager comments. Tom.
I'll keep them fairly brief because we're going to talk detachment later. Next week is the Water Authority hearing for the rate increase and the budget adoption. It's as I reported before to this committee, the Water Authority had a problem with having to try to keep the rate increase under 10%, which mathematically they were unable to do so based on their portfolio of fixed costs related to their water purchase agreements and also energy costs and things like that, and the decline in water sales. One of the problems is the Water Authority tries to show rate increases as a percentage on the rate itself, dollar per acre foot rate. When we talk about it here, we talk about a revenue adjustment overall, like we need to do a 5% revenue adjustment as far as revenue, because it's how much. Here's your expenses. You need 5% more money to cover that. They always break it down into the cost per acre foot, which allows for all sorts of shenanigans to take place, because which rate are you using? Is it treated, untreated? Is it PSAR? Is it pay and transportation rate, or is it not? And there's so many different variables that it makes it difficult. That's why when this committee generally recommends the board, we do a revenue adjustment and then show what the rate impacts in various things are. The water authority doesn't. And so they found themselves stuck. And I early on, when they said it's going to be 13.7, 14%, and the city of San Diego said, we won't take anything over 10%. I figured they would figure out a way to bring it in just under 10%. And then they would say, it's a victory. We've won. Well, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So they came up with a new way to calculate the rates. And I'm not saying that the new method is worse or qualitatively worse than the other one. It's and in some characteristics, it might be slightly better, but I think it's still flawed. That they call it the effective rate. So that if you use the rate calculations they've been using for the last almost 20 years and up until like April, the rate increase was going to be around 12%. But they had this new effective rate. The same revenue increase is now only about an 8 to 9% rate increase. So they created a new bit of math and they mathed away 3% rate increase, which the city is proclaiming to be a great victory for Mayor Gloria and the team that they got it under 10%. But the underlying math to it is flawed. And I'll repeat, as I have there before, say that what they should be presenting is that with the current rates, if we have a given quantity of water that each customer, each 24 member agency purchased, this must raw, this must treated, this must PSAR, take that exact same volumetric mix and show us what the dollars that have to come out of the ratepayers' pockets of this agency to send to the water authority are under the current rate structure and the new rate structure. And then you could see very clearly how the differential impacts its different agencies based on their mix of supplies and things like that. I don't know that there's a number of other agencies who support that, but the water authority hasn't bid on it yet. And I don't know that they ever will. Needless to say, I will be opposing their rate increase, not because I don't think they have financial needs. It's just the way they've gone about it is poor, and the refusal to address the big problem, which is declining sales. And they're forecasting 50,000 acre feet a year more in sales in the next 5 years, when the last 20 years has been doing this number. And Padre Dams Board, there was an article that came out in an East County thing, but they passed a resolution saying we won't accept any increase and we won't vote for anything until they address this problem of fixed take or pay contracts, which make up like 95% of the water authority's projected demand, is a very tenuous place to be. And if they don't get in front of it with Pure Water and the East County projects and other local supply projects come online, these rate increases of 8, 10, 12% are going to be a fond memory, because then they're going to be 18, 20% rate increases, because it's they're in a bit of a pickle. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be an interesting meeting next week, and hopefully not 8 or 9 hours long like a number of meetings have been recently, but that's my report.
So Tom, if you know all this mathematic gymnastics doesn't work out to actually provide the amount of revenue they actually need to pay their costs, do they just again reach into their reserve?
Yeah, and they're using reserves to make this happen as well. They're really drawing the city wanted them to really draw down the reserves, which I think they had, a couple of years ago, they had like $400 million in reserves, which seems to be a little bit excessive. But you can't just keep doing that forever. And at a certain point, you have to look at the structure of it. And but the politics of it are such that they're allowing mathematical gymnastics to say, oh no, it's not 12%, it's only 8%. But when the revenue increase is the same, it's just it's kind of disappointing. But I think it's more likely than not. So next year, the forecasted demands for next year, they're assuming it's going to be a drier than average year in order to hit that demand number, 360,000 acre feet. But I said, what happens if it's a wet year? Because there's El Nino brewing here, and the weather, sometimes that's a wet year. They say, oh, it won't be, there's never been 2 wet years in a row. It's like, well, doesn't mean there can be. So what happens if there is? Oh, well, that won't happen. But if it does happen, then, the revenues drop even further and they're in a pickle. What we try to do here is we budget on worst case scenario and hope for the best. They're budgeting on the best and they keep getting bit in the butt when the worst happens. And so it's just it's a long-standing problem of not getting real, because I think there's changes that need to be made, that if you just keep forecasting your increase, if we said, hey, we're going to sell 20,000 acre feet next year, That'd be awesome, man. Our budgets look great, but is that going to happen? We'll see.
Any other comments? I just have one question. It's a small issue. We have noted that in terms of the rate increase that our district has moved forward with, that as a part of that, under your leadership, Tracy's leadership, Chad's leadership, Robert's leadership, we have managed to keep in a very inflationary time the costs of operating this district relatively flat. From what you can see and how they present their budget, could they say a similar thing about themselves?
Well, they
Are
are.
they exceeding the inflation?
Well, I think if it depends on whether energy is included, because the Poseidon desal plant is a big energy consumer, and SDG&E had some significant rate increases. So that's driving about 2% of that rate increase. But when you look at the Water Authority's budget, 90% of their costs are fixed between water purchases, which is the bulk of it. Debt service is number 2 behind purchasing water, and their CIP, which we said, well, let's trip back to CIP. They say, no, that's all bond funded. And so it's on board debt. And if you don't spend the money within 3 years, then you lose your tax exemption status and the IRS. So they're pressuring the board, because one of the things we do here, because we pay cash for our CIP for the most part, is that let's just pull back in the CIP this year just so that we can push that down the line. They're like, no, we need to spend this money. We've got to spend $100 million this year. Otherwise we'll lose the tax. Well, why did we borrow that much? You take away the board's flexibility. So, the staff costs down there, they're adding several new positions, I think 7 total, even when they have a vacancy rate that's greater than the number of new positions they want. And we're like, hey, why don't you fill the positions you got? Then come ask for more people, but it's, they're in a pickle because they have 90% of their costs are fixed, but only 5% of their revenue is fixed. Right. And we had a long discussion about that here. And, we're going to be 42% fixed recovery, which is hard on ratepayers, but financially, that's the appropriate thing to do. When you're exposed to 90% fixed cost, but only 5% fixed revenue, that change in the weather makes a big difference.
Right. Okay, item number 10. Thank you, Tom. Item 10, finance manager comments. Anything?
So over Memorial Day weekend, the Union Bank to US Bank transition happened. So we went through that process. It was successful. We were able to access all our accounts by Tuesday. Actually by Wednesday, there was a 1-day delay. There was a few reports we weren't able to get, but we just got them yesterday for our bill pay deposits. So everything's going pretty well with that. We have our rate hearing June 27th. And, that's going to be an important one for, Tom was talking about some of the strategy of the Water Authority. What we did here is, through the detachment process, we delayed rate increases and we drew down our reserves. So now we're at the point where we have to do an increase in order to stay solvent, make sure that have funds built up for an emergency or, the unknowns. So that's where we're at, unfortunately, but we have done a really good job, like you said, of keeping things flat, not adding any extras and really just doing the capital that we're committed to. And that absolutely has calculatable ROI that we're going to make more, we're going to save more by doing these projects. Let's see what else. Oh, you will not, there's no finance packet this time because last week we were doing the interim audit, which has changed a lot over the last couple of years. I'll talk about that during the number 14, but that's why you don't see a finance packet this month.
Comments? Okay. Do any committee members have any comments? Pete?
None.
So my question is, in July, will we see a June prelim? That's your year end, right?
Yeah.
Usually it's hard to close June.
You know what?
I understand. That's why I'm asking.
I'll probably go ahead and do a preliminary and just make sure I write that very clearly. The thing is we've gotten to so that a lot of our entries are done monthly.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be, I don't know, all that preliminary.
Huh.
It's It's
Okay.
got most of it in there,
Okay. Well,
other
that's-
than depreciation.
That's admirable, by the way.
Thank you.
Most agencies, you skip the month of, you don't get your June report if you're a government until August. And then you're happy if you get it.
Yeah.
So that sounds great. That's
Thanks.
good. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no comments. So item number 12 is where we are now, and that would be the meter downsize presentation.
Thank you all. This presentation, as the committee knows, the meter downsize or variance requests come through this committee first, and then the committee makes a recommendation, and ultimately the board makes the final approval on a yes or a no for the request. And as some of these have come up over the last couple of months, the discussion has ensued. And so staff took it upon themselves to do an analysis of not only Rainbow's admin code, but our neighboring water agencies admin codes as well and their processes. This presentation was done by Colette Barrow, our new engineering analyst level 2. Pretty sure I got that title correct. We were unable, it was scheduled for May. We pulled it from the agenda. I jinxed it to Tracy a week ago, but rather than pulling again, I'm going to deliver Colette's presentation. So with that, we'll go on. As always, if there's any questions as I go, please just interrupt. We'll stop and obviously do questions at the end if needed. Okay. So I don't know the slide, so I'm learning as I go on this one. All right, so we surveyed the local agencies to compare Rainbow's processes for the downsize meters. We talked about that. Okay, and then the different downsize types. So we have, in our admin code, we have a capacity class change. So someone has a 1.5 inches, but I'm not using this much water anymore. I don't want to pay this fixed monthly fee anymore. Could I get a 1 inch? So that's that one. And then we have the meter exchange or parcel splitting. So some of these larger parcels that are 2, 5, 40 acres, they're now being subdivided. It's going through the county assessor's office. These are legal lot splits. Hey, I used to have 1 2-inch meter serving my 5 acres. Now I would like, 2 1-inch meters or whatever the case may be. So we're dealing with a lot of those different requests. But for the purposes of this, we're going to focus most on that land use change where someone is saying, I no longer need, I used to have a grove. I don't have that anymore. I want to do that. We're not going to focus as much on the lot splitting one. All right. So the way the process goes. Yep. Okay. Perfect. I got to do glasses and no glasses. This is, I'm with you. It's not age. Yeah. This is, I'm going to have to go progressive.
So sad.
This is going to be so annoying. Okay. So the way that the process currently goes is the customer submits a meter downsize request application to the district. District staff reviews the parcel acreage size, what type of land use it is it residential, is it agricultural, and then a 12-month water use study. So we go back at least 12 months to see what the average use is. And Tracy, if I get any of this incorrect, if you could please jump
I'm
and
following you.
correct me. Thank you. Then the staff makes a recommendation. Yes, this variance should be accepted by the board, or no, it's not. So that's the staff's recommendation. And then it goes obviously to the Budget and Finance Committee first. The same case is made before going to the board. If it is approved, the district does not issue refunds or credits to that difference in the previous capacity years. So it's all right, you paid what you paid. Now you're a smaller size, but there's no refunds or credits done.
The only thing I would add there, Chad, is that if it does fall within the admin code parameters that staff signs off on a lot of these.
So
There's
it
quite a
doesn't-
few that you guys don't see.
Okay.
We just take them if they're just outside the variance or they're quite a ways outside and want us to take it anyway to the board.
And we do, I think there, yeah, to Tracy's point, staff goes back and forth a lot. And sometimes the customer will say, I want this to go before the board of directors for their
When
consideration.
we say no.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. If we say yes, yeah, they're very
fine with
happy.
Yeah, and that didn't used to be in our admin code. That was added, I think, in 2015.
Okay.
As I recall. Process for that.
Okay. So again, we reached out to our neighboring water agencies. We didn't focus just on the ones that were adjacent to. We reached out to a total of 7 districts, 6 of which responded. The 7th, we pinged a couple times. They were non-responsive. We didn't go after it anymore. We asked them, does your district allow for downsizing of existing meter? For example, going from 1 inch to 3/4. If so, what is the process in determining the smaller size? And if your district does allow for downsizing, do you refund the customer difference in the initial capacity fees? Again, these questionnaires were sent out. Myself, mainly Colette, followed back up. We had some follow-up questions with some of those different agencies. Okay, so it's important to note that of the 6 agencies who responded, 4 of them are nearly 100% built out. So these are like master plan communities. It's not what we're dealing with where it's used to be ag and now it's becoming more residential. This is already built out. So that's an important note. And then also FPUD and Valley Center are the districts most similar to Rainbow in terms of undeveloped land with the agricultural parcels. And there's a listing of the agencies that did.
I'm gonna jump in here just for a second,
Please.
Chad. That my manners are off. At the beginning of this hearing, I failed to welcome Richard Riggs. He is a ratepayer. He lives in the same community that Pete does. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here. And for your edification, when they talk about downsizing the meters, in most cases, I believe, we are not actually changing the meter out. We are changing the rate they are charged.
We
So-
eventually
We-
do
we
get to the
changed the
meter.
meter.
Yeah,
Eventually.
if it's not, depending on what else is going on,
Right,
because if they're using that little water, too large a meter, we're not registering accurately as well.
Right.
So.
right.
We had a pause on it during the meter exchange process,
That's right. Okay.
but we're doing it more timely now.
But the idea is that you have a one-time capacity charge when you get your meter. And then you are billed at a certain rate, depending on the size of your meter. And if a person believes that they are no longer needing the bigger flow of water and they want to, often we end up hearing their request to get a smaller billing size. And ultimately, as
Yeah.
Tom says, a smaller meter.
And there were no capacity fees for anything until
Well,
about
for
the
years.
mid-90s.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Because capacity fees weren't able to.
So
think
I just wanted to be sure you kind of understood what this conversation was about. Okay, all right.
Okay. All right, so here is some of our survey results. So the green check mark means that yes, it's all within, and then yellow, it's yes, but there's some caveats or restrictions to it. So you can see that all the districts that responded do have something in there. It's not always in their admin code. Sometimes it could be an ordinance. Sometimes, as Tom said, it's just at staff's direction. It wasn't ever added or formally adopted. But they do, yeah, we get those requests, and yes, we do deal with it. Historical water usage measure. So Valley Center, there's a yes, but there was a caveat to the yes. Other qualifications for district, you could see only Olivenhain, Valley Center, and Vista Irrigation District had other qualifications that came in. And then the refund of capacity fee difference, you can see Padre has a yes, but to it, and we're going to get to that. And then also Padre also on the credit capacity fee difference. FPUD and Valley Center both say, yeah, we do a credit capacity fee difference. So when we re-pinged them, oh, so how often does this happen? Like, it actually never happens because they require their customers to go back to the main at the customer's sole expense, abandon so you have a 1-inch lateral, but I only want a 3/4 now. I'm not using this much water. That's great, customer. You need to hire a Class A contractor, go back to the main, abandon that 1-inch corporation stop, install a new 3/4-inch lateral. We will set a new 3/4-inch meter at that time. And yes, we will refund you. Well, the refund ends up being a couple $1,000. That whole process can be just under $600 or $100,000. I mean, it's huge money. And so they said, we don't get that many requests because by the time they go through the process, like, well, this just doesn't pencil out. There's no ROI on this. I might as well just keep paying the monthly fee. So that's why they do it, but there's restrictions on why. Padre Dam, which had that yellow, did it, and they said, we do it, but only within the first year for the same parcel. So if Tom walks in and says, I want to do this, and the meter was just set within 12 months, that's their only time you can do it. So this isn't Tom bought this in 1994 and is now requesting a refund. It's within the first 12 months of the meter being set. They do it. And they said the same thing. It's very seldom that it's ever happened because, again, these are mostly subdivisions that were master planned. Also of note, on that was, I just lost my train of thought. That's probably Ahmed's fault too.
Probably.
Definitely, definitely.
I have something, but that's also on definitely your fault. I'll think of it in a moment.
All I can say is it's really good to see that he is younger than me, much younger than me, and it's.
I was going with some-
He's got
Yeah,
young kids at
Dad,
home.
welcome to our world.
I was really going down and
Right?
like,
He's got
I mean,
young kids at home. That happens when you're not getting your sleep.
wow. All right. It'll come to me in a moment here. I'm trying to.
All right.
what-
Well, we ain't waiting. so
CRS,
keep-
he's seen how he's struggling with his glasses.
What the heck?
Can't remember things. Man, but-
Yeah, Chad,
Anyone else make
Chad, we ain't waiting. Keep
require the
going.
downsize to the main?
Say that again.
Does anyone else require the downsize all the way to the main?
I
water.
believe that, I believe it was in Olivenhein's admin code that they require. And that's so, oh, well, Tom wasn't here yesterday, but in our staff leadership meet yesterday, I was saying that there's some text messages going around with the managers about how, because we pinged all these different admin codes of how can we make this more robust? The customers are burning through these meters. Is there some teeth that the district can have to where it's not just on us replacing it? And I think it was Olivenheim was one of the ones we found that requires them to go to that. So we won't reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. We'll find someone else's language, take the best of the best,
Right.
take that to our board. Man, I'm like staring at this and it's going to hit me like when I'm at Q&A.
Only when you stop.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
In the shower tomorrow. morning.
Exactly. Okay.
Next week. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So here we are with the credit versus the refund. And I'm sure Colette is like screaming right now because unfortunately she can't give this and she had all of this rehearsed and well thought out multiple times over. Okay, so the difference between the credit, and it says right there, the difference in capacity fees issued to the account to offset a new capacity fee. That's what Valley Center does, or applied to divide a lot within multiple meters, FPUD and Rainbow. So we're kind of segueing over. I said we weren't going to talk so much about the lot splits, but in this case, our admin code is very clear. You had 4 acres. You now have legally split that into 4 1-acre parcels. You have a 2-inch water meter, and you now want two of those lots to each have a 1-inch water meter. We do apply those credits that were previously paid to that. You still have to do something with your other 2 lots, but we'll go for there. So that's how that works. And then a refund if within the 1 year of installation. And again, that was Padre Dam only that did that. It came to me. Thank you. So we actually said, so, all right, so you give this credit even though within 1 year. And so the one off of Gerd Road, which has yet to be built, and I don't think they've even purchased their meter yet, but this kind of is what got this whole discussion really going, was we asked Padre Dam, so how do you then police that after the fact? Tom came in within 1 year. He says, see, I'm not using the water I said I was going to use. I don't need this larger meter. And we refunded. How do we then police that? And they said, we don't. It's just an on your honor thing. And again, when we reping, they said, we truly just don't get that many requests to do this. But there is nothing that says that it follows the title or something placed on the deed of the land. It's an on your honor
I
thing.
think one of the challenges that for most agencies, Valley Center and Rainbow and Fallbrook being different, they don't have the users, the range of users.
Correct.
From everybody like Bill's house to somebody who's got 20 acres on a 1-inch meter just burning them up.
Or 4.
And it's our customer base is a much more difficult nut to crack than these bedroom communities that are all subdivided homes.
All right, so we have some conclusions here. So what we found in this analysis was that there's no other district that issues just a straightforward refund or capacity fees. There was heavy caveats placed on how and when and if these were going to be refunded or credited. Some districts do, but again, you had to jump through a lot of hoops to get that. And then most customers don't move forward. And again, it was due to the cost of what the customer is bearing that sole expense to hire that Class A contractor to do that. I mean, this is requiring, so if it's a 12-inch main and we have 4 or 40 existing meters off of that, we're shutting all of those down. The customer is paying for all of that. Staff time, contractor time, everything.
Now, it seems a little unnecessary to me to have them change the lateral down there. I guess their thinking must be that if you had a 1-inch lateral, 3/4 inch meter, they could still freight more water through there, but it's marginally more water unless that main is like hundreds of yards away, because the head loss on 40 feet of 1-inch versus 3/4 inch copper is not zero, but it's not significant, especially at our pressures.
Just having all the new meters that we do make that even less
Yeah.
necessary.
I think that, and I don't know how we're going to crack the other nut, is our bigger problem is the people who are overusing the meters.
Correct.
Mm.
And I've got word into Alfred, and hopefully by our next E&O meeting, we can have some some information on that, because that's a more pressing problem for us, for people who keep burning up meters.
Yeah.
You know, that's a problem.
So Tom, to answer that, it does say here in the speaking notes that Vallecito and Alevinheim are the districts that do require to go back to the main. So, and pull a new one.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme.
Okay. And so that last bullet point, during this analysis, it's staff's opinion that Rainbow is within, is aligned with the other local agencies and standards. We're not an outlier. In fact, the outlier was the one that issued the credit or the refund. Oops. And just the staff's recommendation that, you know, the admin code is what it is. Again, during yesterday's staff leadership meeting, this came up during discussion because there was someone out there on I think it was a 3/4 inch meter that we're replacing frequently. And so how can we do that? So we're looking at the admin code, and
We can upsize that meter, but
Mhm.
that was right now, it's on our expense to put the plumbing in to do it.
different.
But that's something our meter guys can handle,
And
just
so
to keep the meter from burning up, or manifold it, put 2 of them in there or whatever.
There was some discussion about changing the admin code to include, well, we'd have to do it with the cost of service study, but to do a fee for customers that are burning through meters so that they have to pay for the material.
That's where we got to get some legal advice on that.
Yeah.
Because that gets to be a bugger. And it's the lost water that is the most expensive. The meter's the cheap part.
So I think as you mentioned earlier, we undertook this in part because of some questions I think that I raised about the guy on Gerd Road. Is that right?
we refer to it as the committee,
Yeah.
but yes.
You asked what other agencies did in these situations.
Right. And I'm just trying to cycle through in my mind if what we just heard is 100% pertinent to what he had. He was on a construction meter and he wanted to put in a smaller meter than the typical size of his property.
Yeah, in our admin
indicated.
code, once you
Right.
get over a certain size
Oh,
of
right.
property, we require a
Right.
certain size meter.
Larger.
They want to do a shorter one, say, trust us on this. And the other question was, well, what if we did give them the smaller meter, but some sort of agreement that, or the same size meter, but if they showed that after a year they're under that threshold, then we'd credit them back some of their cap fees. Like Chad said, the problem is that in the first year, how do we know? I mean, this particular customer in that particular case hasn't even produced a set of plans to show what they're going to do on the property. So all we got is them
Saying,
hand waving.
And-
And so that makes it difficult for us to make a land use assessment as to what's going to happen there.
So basically what would happen is, in his case, he would say, I am only using this for residents. I am not going to be watering a grove. I only need a 3/4. We say, no, you need to have a 1 inch or whatever, whatever it is. And then we install the plumbing back to the main at that size, so that if he then subsequently proves that he is doing what he said he was going to do, then the only way that he would get a credit for a smaller meter would be if he went back and redid the plumbing that we made him do.
Not under
Is
our
that-
policy.
we don't
No.
do that.
No, we don't do
Okay.
that.
That's what I'm trying to
No,
discern.
Other agencies did that we don't give any credit. Once capacity fee is paid, it's paid.
And I think that was the questions that came out of this committee was, but that doesn't seem fair. This person did it. They knew they weren't going to do it, but they had to pay the 12,000 instead of the 6,000 or 8,000. And then they proved it. There's no credit in our admin code as it states right now that would ever be issued.
If
By,
we were-
by the way, that's fair, because once those fees are paid, they're budgeted and spent to create capacity. I mean, eventually that's what the money goes for. So
I think that if
why
we,
isn't that fair?
I think if we were to change this policy, it would also have to come with the other side of the ledger, which is, all right, what to do if that person now does go and starts burning up meters? What leverage do we have there? So I think that we can certainly look at it within a reasonable amount of time. 1 year probably isn't enough. It probably need like a 2-year average to see what they're doing. But then let's say John Q. Smith buys property, builds a house. Great. He's got 2.5 acres, but he's only using one part, but then sells it to Mr. Jones, and Mr. Jones plants 4 acres of avocado on it, whatever, and starts cranking water through it. And then we're at the point where they're burning up meters and they're overusing the capacity. That's where the variable fixed charge idea was, never could quite get that to work out. We'd have to figure out how to have the carrot and the stick here so that we can handle both sides of the equation.
That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. You and I will just get to respectfully disagree.
That it ain't fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Because,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
these payers are paying.
Any further thoughts on, comments on this? Okay.
Thank you for doing the review.
Yeah,
Well,
Really,
the
thank
thanks
you.
to-
Thank you.
Colette's listening, and the thanks is to Colette. She put this together, and I know she was looking forward to it, but due to circumstances, you got me instead.
and send us all an email or a text when you think of that thing that you.
He found it.
I found
you
it.
found it? Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
I
okay.
remember.
He found it.
Item 13, detachment update. Tom, you gonna do that?
Yeah, I think I can do it.
All right.
Last Monday was the big day at LAFCO. We had an early start. I guess if you guys were up watching the 6 a.m. news on KOSI, I was out in front of the county building, 6 a.m., 6:30 and 7. Meeting started at 8. The detachment process started at 8:30. Went all day. It was a long day. The staff did a great job giving their report. It took them about an hour and a half. Then Fallbrook and Rainbow went for a half an hour, and then the Water Authority, who had previously demanded 2 hours worth of time and then said, no, we'll take 1 hour. They had a half an hour. They used like 22 minutes of it. And we're like, well, what was that whole stink about? Why you guys? And we got a stroke of luck in that they sent down their former general counsel and now special counsel, Mark Haddam, who's a litigator, and he tends to be a lectern pounder and finger pointer, and he doesn't come across very well. After that, there was a public testimony. There was quite a few people from our area that came down, a school bus full of people. And we had it was a great turnout, a great mix of different types of land users, but a lot of growers. And the California Avocado Commission, Ken Melvin, came down to speak in favor of us. Of the 24 member agencies of the Water Authority, guess how many of them showed up to speak in opposition? 1. Sorry, it's close to 1. Was that 3 or was that 1? One did. And it was a brand new general manager from Padre Dam. When I saw, hey, Brian, what are you doing? He goes, oh, my board didn't tell me to come down, but I just wanted to come down. And I think he's just trying to make a name for himself. He's new to the game and, getting out there and doing some public speaking. Interesting though, once they got into phone comments, there was 4 or 5 comments in opposition that came from various trade unions, and include one of them that was like not Screenwriters Guild, they're busy, but it was like some sort of a motion picture production guild of some sort to speak in it. And you can tell these were people their political favors would call it, because one of them, anybody's been dealing with LAFCO calls it LAFCO, they LAFCO. This person was reading, it says, I would like to let the commissioners of LAFCO know that we strongly oppose this thing that LAFCO is looking to do. And they're clearly reading the copy for the first time. And so it was a little, I don't want to say it's just disingenuous. But the Water Authority had sent out, and I get them because I'm a board member and a member agency manager, the emails telling everybody, hey, date, you got to show up, you got to show up, you got to show up. And nobody did. Well, 1. And so I think that tells you how concerned the other member agencies are that they didn't bother to even send a junior staffer down there to read something into the record. But we took a lunch break and then got back at it. And earlier on in the afternoon, it was probably by that point about 2 o'clock or so, maybe, or we got a motion that Chair Desmond, once all the public commentary was done, Chair Desmond, who has, we had presumed would be supportive of us, but he's always kind of held his cards close to the vest. He says, hey, I can't disclose my deliberations here because I'm the chair of the committee and I don't want to say either way what's going on, which is appropriate. He came out very strongly and walked through some of the nonsense arguments that the Water Authority had been making. And and swatted them aside, saying at one point, you know, because they're trying to change the law and the rules, they say, hey, this is like you guys asking them to sign a prenup in divorce court, right? Which is kind of what they're trying to do. And so after his comments, he made a motion to approve option 2, which is detachment with an exit fee. And it was seconded by Barry Willis of Alpine Fire. And then immediately after that, Commissioner McKenzie called for a recess, strangely, right at that point. And we're like, well, what's that about? You know, but it'd been a long day. You know, maybe she's got to go to the bathroom, and she went out in the hallway. And then also came back in, and I saw her chatting with Sandy Curl. And I'm not sure how appropriate that is, but that's something we may take up with LAFCO later. But then got back in there, and they had a whole series of commissioners went around the horn talking about it, what it was. We got very strong support from Mayor Dane White of Escondido, who I live in Escondido, and I'd met him before, and I asked him in the hallway, say, what's going on? Hey, thanks for your support. And he said, you know, I asked my growers in our area, because they have avocado growers there, what they thought of this. And he said, every single one of them said, oh yeah, they should be let go. You should let them go. And so he says, that's all I needed, because the people, the Water Authority tried to make a claim that we were going to hurt other growers in San Diego County, and that we're only 30% of ag in San Diego County. And there is ag down there in other parts of the county, but I think if you're counting chicken ranches like Frank Hilliker's egg farm and things like that, sure, that's ag, but it's not water intensive ag like, you know, growing crops is. So we had his support, and it looked like we had 4 votes there, but then Joe McKenzie starts asking some crazy questions. City of San Diego came out against Councilman Whitburn and gave a very emotional testimony about Mrs. Smith, who lives on a fixed income, and we're asking her to pay $2 a month more for her water bill, and she's going to have to cut that $2 somewhere. Those words might just get repeated at the Water Authority board meeting next week, but instead of $2, they say 8%. Don't worry, it's not 12%, it's only 8%, Mrs. Smith. So I may reuse some of his words. He's on the Water Authority board as well, so that'll be fun. But Joe McKenzie starts asking a lot of questions, and some of which I had personally talked to her about, and I know LAFCO staff had talked to her about in detail, and starts talking about how, well, you know, the exit fee's not long enough, or it's not enough. And they're like, well, what would you propose instead? And she did, I don't know, and was wandering around all over the place. She used terms like, there's funny numbers here, which is absolutely not the case. I think that the Water Authority plants that in her head. You know, this thing's been studied ad nauseum by a lot of people at great expense. And, you know, if anything, in my presentation, I said that the detachment fee is too high, the exit fee is too high, because they're not crediting us for the reserves, the assets we're leaving behind, the water we paid for that's sitting down at San Vicente Reservoir that the other people are going to get to keep. There's millions of dollars of water there. And so she questions the validity of the credit for the emergency storage pump stations, which the Water Authority in their documents, LAFCO says it will save us $40 million and offset several years worth of the impacted detachment. And she's questioning that because they put in their head, and the Water Authority laid this out there, their attorney, that because they're going to debt finance these pump stations, that means it's not $40 million, it's less than that. I'm like, well, last time I checked, when it's not like you're putting it in a CD, you know, you're getting a savings account where you earn interest, you pay interest when you finance something. The other problem with that, and we subsequently sent information to staff at LAFCO, the concept the Water Authority had for those pump stations was that they would build them, but we would own them. And they shouldn't, I don't believe they legally can debt finance something they don't own, that we own. And so they can't debt finance it. And the whole argument that would confuse someone, especially someone of Joe's experience, that somehow by debt financing, it makes it cheaper. It isn't a savings. Now, debt financing, is we'll hear about, can smooth a rate impact within an agency to pay for it over time, but the dollar amount doesn't change. If we got to build something that's worth $5 million, it's $5 million, whether we paying interest on something over some period of time, which turns it into $5,500,000 or whatever it is. But the price goes up. So it was quite frustrating. And this thing was getting late in the day, and things were, you know, not moving along. And then Supervisor Anderson suggests that we table the matter to a later date. And the next available date was July 10th, but Commissioner McKenzie said, oh, I can't make July 10th. So, all right, he changed it to move it to August. And that's what was passed that day. And so as of that day, the commission had voted to move it to August 10th, August 7th, that 7th. But since then, you know, I've talked to you about AB 530, where the city of San Diego is trying to change the rules on the vote, which is going to make it a throughout the Water Authority service area. And I don't like to use it county-wide because I just spent a lot of time out in the eastern part of San Diego County, and it's not Water Authority territory out there. Water Authority service area wide vote. And from what we understand, and apparently LAFCO met with the author of the bill, or she was the author of the original bill that she gutted and amended to make it this bill. They're looking to make it an urgency bill and trying to get it on the governor's desk in the next 6 or 8 weeks to try to beat the August date so that they can try to have a new law in place before LAFCO meets again on the 7th of August, which is bonkers. Because when I knew we were going to be up against some headwinds with the Water Authority on this one, but I never thought it would take an action of the governor of California to block it, because they can't get it on the facts or the law. So they're going to try to hurry up and shove through a vote in the assembly. But I don't think this is going to get very far in the legislature, because what is the urgency here? And you're going to drag the governor into this little fight. It's a little crazy. But in response to that, LAFCO has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. Just this morning, I heard. It's going to have 2 items on it. One to talk about AB 530 and one to talk about rescheduling the date back to July 10th. Which obviously we support.
Nice.
And you know, it changed. I don't know how many commissioners will be there, which ones will be there. But you know, I'm confident. And in between now and then, you know, the commissioners who had questions, I'll be meeting with them, and other people will be meeting with them to try to clarify their questions. I mean, there are certain people, like City of San Diego is a hard no, right? They're done. And I think Supervisor Anderson could go either way. There's only one hard no on that commission. And I'm pretty confident, I'm very confident in 4 votes yet.
The assistant mayor.
He's not, he's just a city councilman, Whitburn.
Oh, okay.
What about Christy Becker? Is she open?
Well, I mean, she was chair of one of the community choice aggregation utilities, power utilities. So she understands about wholesale choice because she leads one of those groups in the North County coastal area where they try to break away from SDG&E. So she groks that whole concept. She's also subject to a lot of political pressure from the political party that controls a lot of San Diego political ideology there. And I'm not going to use any party names, but and so I'm sure she's getting a lot of heat from that side to say, hey, you got to block this thing, you know, because like I said, the facts and law on our side, this is all about people pulling political favors. One of the other elements that confused the board, the commission rather, is that Monday morning, the chair of MWD sent an email to Keen Simons claiming that Met had some authority or a prerogative to review this themselves.
After that.
Even though they had already weighed in on this years ago, saying, hey, we got nothing to do with it. We're neutral. Do what you're going to do. Let us know how it comes up. And that's in writing. But the chair that came from, there were board meetings and committee meetings, and then the general manager, with obviously support from staff, because there were maps and charts and things like that, sent a letter in. Here's the applicable laws. Here's what we go with, and this is what they do. Well, they put some of the agenda. He sent this email out saying, well, you know, we need to review this. And so some commissioners are like, well, wait a minute. I thought we had resolved this with Met, which we have. And it's clear in the law that Met's board has no action on this. It's written in statute. And we knew this, but this is just a political gambit for delay so they can try to work something else out in the legislature, I guess. And so I found out I was camping over the weekend. I got a text, somebody needs to urgently call them, and I found out Met had put it on their agenda for this morning in LA at 8:30 a.m. And so to discuss it. So I got up and left my house at 5 a.m. and drove up there. That's where I was just getting back to from here, back here, to testify in that hearing, to say that, you know, this isn't a thing. And you know what? Met staff and legal counsel got up and laid out what their policies are, what the law says, and what the staff and legal counsel laid out were exactly what we have been saying and not what the chair is saying. And this is one guy doing a political payback. And I said that. I said, well, I used the Donald Trumpism. I said, well, people are saying that this is just political payback for the water authority helping you get elected, but I don't know about that. But you know, hey, it is. This is really just because he represents the city of San Fernando, you know, and he's trying to say this is going to disrupt Metropolitan's planning process and all this other stuff. And it's like, dudes, no, it isn't. But it's just them, you know.
Same water,
Same plant, same place.
water,
It's just a different
just a
invoice.
different hydrant.
It's not even a different hydrant.
No,
It's just
same hydrant, yeah.
different, it's just a different place to send the invoice. It's because the same amount of water is going to come down that pipe from the same source, the same treatment plant, same
Yep,
everything, no matter what.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, guys. So it's disappointing that it's come to that I got to spend many, many hours on the road up there, but that's the way it is. And so today, this morning, the Chamber of Commerce, the San Diego Chamber of Commerce was meeting about it, and I haven't got a readout yet on it. And so one of our other team members spoke in opposition to them supporting this AB 530. Last week or the week before the hearing, an executive committee of the San Diego Chamber of Commerce considered the city of San Diego wanted to come down and get their support. That's the big Chamber of Commerce, the whole countywide, and they lost. They came down. We weren't asked to attend. The chair and vice chair of the water authority got down there and asked this committee to support AB 530, and they said no. We need to hear from all sides, and it was kind of nice. You know, we don't have to be there now because, well, people can tell a political gambit when they see it, and a hit job in an asymmetrical political warfare. We're definitely not as well suited as somebody sitting downtown at City Hall with all the politicians. It's just a little less up here in Rainbow, but I guess our messaging has been good enough to where people knock it down. So tomorrow will be an interesting day. I guess I got to rearrange my calendar again and go down and do something else. But I do expect to hear to see where they're going to land on it. I think it depends on which commissioners show up, but I think there's broad support. LAFCOs don't like, and this is true statewide, when people can't get their want from LAFCO, running to the legislature to get the legislature to give some carve out or exemption. Nobody likes somebody, you know, if you've got the rules, here's the rules, and you can't comply with the rules, that you just try to get yourself a special carve out at the legislature. People don't like that. And so it's not going to go over well with LAFCO. And so if they do reschedule it to the 10th of July, you know, then we'll be back down there on the 10th of July and try to wrap this thing up. But you know, it'd be a perverse thing if the water authority's reckless gambit to change the rules hastens approval of the detachment. I don't think they think of second order impacts of actions that well, if we do this, I don't think they ever say, if we do this, what are they going to do? They're playing checkers and everybody else is playing chess here. So that's kind of where we're at. It's I remain cautiously optimistic. And you know, a tip of the cap to our team to be at this point with all that was thrown at us, the millions of dollars in spending against us, and the lawyers and all the politicians and lobbyists, to get to where, you know, Jim Desmond is now more energized than ever to do this because he watched what, you know, the BS they're laying out there. He's doing the people in this district a real service now.
Question.
Sure.
Has anything been written that shows all the positives and negatives for both sides on this issue?
Oh, 12,000 pages have been written.
Because I've been looking around and I sure haven't seen anything in the news.
Yeah, the news media has been dabbling around it. We probably would have saw more articles on it. The Voice of San Diego's run a couple, the UT a little bit. It's such an inside baseball thing. I think the best document to get is the prospectus that LAFCO staff put together. They have a staff report, then they have a shorter version that's only 4 or 5 pages long. They call our prospectus, that really lays out the key. And I think we have copies of
We
that.
handed it out 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, maybe we
I've
can
never
send
seen that.
Maybe we
That'd
can
be
email
fun to
around.
see.
Can you get?
Okay,
Do you
yeah.
get?
I'll send it to everyone.
Yeah,
again.
we'll send that around.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's succinct, it's well written, and it talks about, you know, at the town hall meeting, we had some handouts, and some of the people who were there said, hey, this is a great report. You guys did a great job. We're like, hey, we didn't write that. LAFCO wrote that. Because like we always said, facts and law, 100% on our side. Politics, it's an uphill battle.
Do you think public opinion really matters in this case?
I think that whenever you have a deliberative body that doesn't usually get a lot of people there, when they have a bunch of people show up, it tends to help, especially if somebody's a little on the fence.
Yeah.
And so
I didn't mean it that way. I
Oh.
mean, here's
like
my
news
point.
media, like-
Yeah, here's my point. I've been watching the news media on this for years, but I mean, recently, the UT article, the others that I've seen, you know, they listen to the city.
Oh, yeah.
And so what they say is basically two underlying points. Rainbow and FPUD want to buy cheaper water from Riverside. And it's going to cost all of you ratepayers in the county a couple of bucks a month. You know, that is the message. I mean, you can read all the rest of the stuff, but that's the simple of it. And it's the simple of it on news reports that I've been listening to. I caught 3 different channels running the story
Yeah.
the day of their decision to postpone. And they all said basically the same. They're just taking the newspaper articles.
Yeah, there's some math problems with that too, because the
Well, of course there is.
LAFCO, again, when you're using these averages, the denominators become important. And the $2.20 per household or per customer monthly impact is actually totally distorted because they split them out into
Mhm.
dollars per agency, and then for each agency, dollars per customer. Well, UEMA MWD, who doesn't sell water in 100 cubic foot units like we do, or 1,000 gallons units, they sell water in acre feet. They
Yeah.
bill in acre feet. And yeah, it's going to be $18 or $20 a month more per bill for them, but the average bill is like $2,600, right? In that agency. And so a relative impact the same, but then they took all these and it was going to be 85 cents a month for this agency, 95 here, $1.40, $1.30, whatever. If you take the median value of that, it's $1.33 a month. But if you can average of these averages, it distorts the data. So we don't, you know, the $2, whether it's $1.20 or $2.20, the reality is with the exit fee, the water authority's held whole for 5 years. And if they can't manage to deal with a 1.5% disruption in their revenue over 5 years, that's on them, not us.
Yeah, well, you know, it seems like we've been at a disadvantage in terms of getting the real story is this, that our agencies have spent $900 million helping them build a system to transport, store, and treat water for the rest of the county.
Yeah.
Because we don't benefit. And that we don't benefit just doesn't ever get into those stories, that everything is south of us, that, you know, we're right up against the Metropolitan Aqueduct and that we get no benefit from all of this money that we've been pouring into it, raising the price of water to our agricultural customers who are now, you know, losing. And it just seems to me that the flip side of that story that I keep hearing is true. I wish we could get some way, get that story told as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do to compel the media people to do one thing or another. One thing I do know is that reporters like to have access to the sources of power, and the San Diego City Hall is a good source for stories, a lot better than Rainbow and Fallbrook for future stories. And
Sure.
so I'm sure that, you know, you've probably all heard stories of a particular writer starts writing things that a particular politician doesn't like. That person gets no more access. I can't say that's happening here, but you know, that's a factor to consider.
Yeah.
When you think of why wouldn't they tell this side of the story? Well, there's only 50,000 people total up here, and most of their readership's down there, and they're trying to sell clicks and ads. So that's one of the problems, is that there's nothing bleeding here yet, even though the avocado industry is, but
Yeah. Sure.
Any
Okay.
chance that you could get interviewed by a TV company?
I've done several of them. I did 3 of them last Monday. Live shots. I even got in a dig on my last live shot because I had to get very early to get down there. I call the water authority the Roach Motel of water districts, because you can check in, but you can never check out. There's people telling me I got to change that to Hotel California.
California, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not an Eagles fan, and I just remember those Roach Motel ads as a kid. I don't think young people know Eagles songs either. So for other people think I'm just.
Yeah.
Some of us do.
I think it's more relatable than the Roach one.
Yes.
But I like Clinton making them like roaches.
Well, at the end of the day, let's
Yeah.
hope that the handful of people on LAFCO who are the ultimate decision makers, they are the ones that we need to convince.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that update, Tom.
Was it shorter than the last one?
That was delightful.
I enjoy it every time.
The part that I
Sure.
found most delightful was the update about tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
That's very interesting. Okay, let's go to item 14. Now we're gonna get on some nitty gritty here. Item 14, audit update. Please.
Okay, so we had our interim audit last week. I was alluding to how the audits have changed the way they do it. The interim used to just be a quick check-in. And now it's basically like a full-on audit. We get as much done as we can during that interim process, so that the year-end process is a lot quicker. So it went really well. Our year-end is set for September 5th through the 8th, which is probably the first one they do for year-end. So we're on a really fast schedule for close. But there's nothing so far. Everything looks really good, and we'll know in mid-September if there's any issues, but I don't foresee anything because we haven't changed anything from last
So
year.
they'll have their work completed and a draft audit by 3rd through 8th.
So they're here the 5th through the 8th.
5th.
Um,
I'm sorry.
They usually have it within, 2 to 3 weeks. So, but in order to have that, we have to have our books closed for year end, everything cleaned up, done, accrued.
Right.
I like getting it done early,
Sure. Makes
it's
sense.
just so much easier and you can move on. I found with us, closing the month earlier, getting things done earlier, if you just stay ahead of everything, then you don't fall behind.
Yeah.
It's a lot less stressful.
Well, and based on what the way you handled things last year and the results we got, I think we have every reason to expect that we're probably just.
Yeah, I think, I want to get the numbers timely just so that we know where we end with reserves and, we can be more proactive on any changes that need to be made. So.
Any other comments? All right, item 15, wastewater loan update.
So this is the $5 million loan that we're looking at getting, just, kind of like a gap financing in case we need it, if we don't get any, developer, fees or, we may not need it, but we're going out for it anyway. I reached out to 10 different financial institutions. So I want to let you guys know that I'm going to be coming back next month with a proposal for which one that, ones that we should choose. We had, let's see, 5 that didn't respond, but we did get some favorable rates. One of the
5 out of how many solicitations?
so 5 did not respond out of 10.
Out of 10, okay.
But 2 of them were more of the consulting type of firms. They weren't necessarily ones that were going to be getting us any sort of direct financing. But I was pleasantly surprised to get back rates of about 4.6 to 5.8. What else? There was a couple. The one thing that's changed since the last time we went out for financing is they're requiring that we have our deposits with that bank. So for some of these, that's a hard no. So it kind of makes the selection a little easier. There's one that we're probably going to end up recommending that works with Lake Elsinore Water. They do equipment leasing and finance programs. They had the lowest rate. So I'll have a report for you guys on that next month, but I just wanted to let you know where we're at with it.
And so their rate was 4.6.
4.65. Just, better than I expected.
Any questions, comments? Any more?
That is pretty decent, given the
Yeah.
rate.
And
increase.
once I give them a preliminary, yes, they can hold that for 30 days. I'm kind of waiting so that we can get this done within the month of July. So hopefully the feds don't come out with another increase this week.
Is this a straight loan or a line of credit?
It's a straight loan. It's basically like a lease. And then we're using the lift station one as our,
And the period is what?
that's for 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yep.
Item 15. Appointment 16, appointment of committee vice chair. Well, that's of course driven by the fact that Julie is moved on. And so in order to have a committee vice chairperson, it basically means, well, I love this, that either Pete or Bill need to step up.
I nominate Bill.
Way to step up. Those are always
I
fun.
thought it was more of a step back, but
Pete, stepping up and misdirection are two entirely different things. You know that, right?
Well, I'd be delighted.
You'd be delighted. Okay.
Sure.
Good for Bill.
awesome.
Do we have to have like a motion and a second and all that? Okay, so Pete,
I
you,
made the nomination for Bill.
okay, I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Congratulations, Bill.
So are you planning to travel extensively? Yeah,
I do plan to do a little, but I don't think it's going to conflict right.
me
Okay.
too.
Okay, that's great, Bill.
Sure. Thank you.
Weren't you the vice chair before?
I think so.
So you don't need a tutorial on what the duties are and all of that, right? Okay,
No,
No.
I don't.
Yeah.
Basically,
congratulations.
you
Thank
don't
you.
show up.
Yep.
You know, that's it.
And thank you. Thank you. Thank you for taking it on.
You're welcome.
Okay, item 17, list of suggested agenda items for the next scheduled meeting of this committee. And I wrote down wastewater loan detachment and audit. Does that sound right, Tracy? Or do you think there won't be an audit?
Probably no audit update.
That's what I'm thinking, because,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So really, we just have wastewater and detachment, right?
So far, yeah.
Okay. And of course, anything you guys come up with that needs to happen.
And I have one thing, and that's just, we'll be past the end of the fiscal and be interesting to see how we end up with, on what kind of numbers we end up with on sales. It's just kept on being cloudy and cool and, water use has to continue to be dropping through this period, compared to a year ago. I mean, we were 85 degrees, a year ago, and we're 65 degrees. That's
Well, my
quite a change.
My golf game is suffering, so because of the temperature. So I just say that. Yeah, I'm with you. When do we get some heat?
Boy,
Okay.
it really is. It's got to have an impact. And if it does, then what your thoughts on how that's going to affect our finish of the fiscal. So just your thoughts on it.
So at 2:08, which is not quite the land speed record we set some time ago, but close. I think we are done with our business. So I'm gonna adjourn this meeting, and QED, let's quit and eat dinner. So there we go. We're done.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Great information.
All right.